Welcome to the Real Estate Bee with your guide and as a trusted real estate expert, Daniela Gnecchi.
Welcome back to everything you need to know to purchase a property in Spain as a foreigner. This week's news update is entirely dedicated to tourist rental. There have been some changes in the laws that regulate tourist rental. So if you're planning to renting out your properties in Spain in hotspots like the Costa Blanca, Costa del Sol, Costa Cálida, or the main cities to tourists, you need to know the latest rules that will be affecting the tourist rental market. From new license requirements to possible fines, Spain is cracking down to balance, in theory, tourist rental with housing. In this video, we will break down all the main changes, and I will explain you what they mean for you and also compare across the main coastal regions where foreigners buy the most. So stick around because it's a very important video. I will add it also to my buy to let playlist about how to rent out your property in Spain, so you will have everything together. Before starting, I ask you to please subscribe to my channel, like the video preemptively, and hit the notification button so you will be informed when a new video comes out about news on the Spanish real estate market, information, and everything you need to know to buy in Spain as a foreigner. Now, let's dive in. Why the changes? Spain, as we all know, is a tourism powerhouse. In 2024, it welcomed almost 100 million tourists. And although the total number of tourist rental apartments represent a small minority of the number of housing in the country, if you have been following my videos, you know very well the situation, and you know that Prime Minister Pedro Sánchez is blaming tourist rental for the current housing crisis, which affect long-term rentals, which is a situation that he himself created with the housing law of 2023. While I agree that regulating tourist rental in apartments and especially in touristic hotspots is necessary because it's completely out of control and there are many people who still rent out without a license, I don't appreciate being continuously lied about the real reasons behind what happens. And let me refer here to the 13 hours of blackout I suffered on April 28th, which were explained as a rare atmospheric event. Sure, enough with this political propaganda. What Sanchez is doing is protecting the tenants who don't pay the rent because they are the only ones who are still voting for him. According to his law, when someone rents out long term and the tenant stops paying, these tenants, if they prove that they are people in need, and believe me, they are very good at doing that, the owner of the apartment cannot kick them out. So it becomes the responsibility of the private people to take care of the supposedly people in need. Of course, this created a very predictable effect that the amount of properties rented out long term basically was cut in half. So it's not because people rent to tourists that there are no long-term rentals, but people rent to tourists because they don't want to rent long-term because they are not protected. This is the situation. All the experts agree that until this law is completely eliminated or substantially changed, the situation will not change. Anyway, what's going on? Spain's autonomous regions like the Valencian community, Murcia, Andalusia, and several other regions have rolled out stricter rules to try, in theory, to prioritize long-term rental while keeping tourism thriving. Spoiler alert, long-term rental will not improve because of these changes in the rules. Because as long as the law that protects only the tenants is not substantially changed, nothing will change. And people who were renting out long-term, they either rent medium-term or to tourists, or they don't rent at all. It's not by reducing tourist rental that people will go back to rent out long-term. The big shift started with the regional decrees, like the Valencia's August 2024 update, and a national law that was effective since April 3rd, 2025, the same day of the termination of the Golden Visa. These changes affect everyone, whether you own a villa, an apartment, or you just want to rent out a room. These laws affect you. So let's go look at it in detail and understand what is going on. So what are the changes? Change number one, a clear definition of tourist rentals. These changes according to the region. The regions now define what counts as a tourist rental. In the Valencian community, home to Costa Blanca, rentals of 10 days or less are tourist rental and need a tourist license. Anything over 11 days is seasonal or long-term if it's over 1 year, and it's governed by different rules. The province of Murcia from the Costa Cálida considers short-term rentals typically under 30 days, like other regions like Catalonia, for example, as touristic if marketed for tourists. Andalusia's Costa del Sol is broader, covering rentals up to 2 months as tourist rentals. This means that you need to know your region's rules to avoid possible penalties. Change number 2, stricter licensing requirements. Getting a tourist license is now mandatory across all regions of Spain, and it's becoming harder to get one. You will need an habitation license proving your property is livable. This is something you always get when you buy a property classified as residential, so it's not an issue. You will need a municipal certificate confirming that the property is allowed for tourism, a liability insurance and safety features like fire extinguishers, and you need to display a unique license number in all ads. Murcia requires a physical placard at the property, and Andalusia demands a complaints book. Licenses last 5 years, but renewals, especially after 2029, in Valencia and Murcia may be restrained if the local zoning rules change. So, to sum up, all the tourist rental apartments, if you rent to tourists during the year, you must register your property in a registry of tourist rental apartments, something that varies across regions, can be done online, and the agency that takes care of your apartment can do it for you. Change number 3, community of owners. Here is the real game changer. Starting April 3rd, 2025, Spain's new law required properties in communities, in residential buildings, to get explicit approval for tourist rentals. you need a 3/5 majority vote, basically 60% of owners and ownership percentage, to be able to do tourist rental in the building. This applies to new licenses, not to existing licenses, all over Spain. Existing licenses are safe. You don't need this approval. But the communities can still limit rentals with a 3/5 vote, thanks to a 2024 Supreme Court ruling. Before this law, the majority required to forbid tourist rental was 100%, which was, of course, much harder to reach. Now, it may be quite likely that many buildings could forbid tourist rental. Now, if you buy a new development apartment in a new development building, this may be easier because usually people who buy these apartments, especially in areas like the Costa del Sol, Costa Blanca, are foreigners who want to rent out the property. It's a second resident. They use it for part of the year. The rest of the time they rent it out. So it could be much easier to get this approval by the community because several owners would be interested in doing that. Also, if you buy, of course, an independent house, you won't have any problem. If, like I suggested in my video about tourist rental, you purchase a property in a resort that is entirely dedicated to tourist rental, you will never have any problem at all. You may have problems with the community if you buy an apartment in a residential building in the center of the city, or you buy a second-hand property. So in a building where most of the owners are people who live there full time. I kind of understand that because I lived in Barcelona in buildings where half of the properties were dedicated to tourist rental, and it was a total nightmare. But if you buy a new development property or some of these other types of properties, then you shouldn't have problems. However, always remember that you can rent out medium term. It does not require any license, and it does not require the approval by the community of owners. They cannot forbid it. Tourist rental is ideal to rent out during the peak season, but during the rest of the year, medium-term rental actually works better, and it has lower costs. It's highly profitable and ensures a steady income. You may want to check my playlist about the different types of rentals when I explain well all the different types of rental. Change number 4, higher fines and guest rules. If you break these rules, you may be in trouble. Fines can reach 600,000 euros in the regions of Valencia and Murcia for things like renting without a license or renting rooms illicitly. Yes, because room rentals are banned for tourism in these regions unless you are on site in the region of Murcia. In Andalusia, the fines are much lower. The maximum is 150,000, but sometimes the communities can add extra fees. All Spanish regions require you to register guests over 16 with the police within 24 hours, exactly like hotels. This is what the agency that takes care of tourist rental for you will do it, so you don't have to worry about that. Plus, Valencia owners must report when they switch between touristic and seasonal use to avoid deregistration. Now, let's compare the three areas, Costa Blanca, Costa Cálida, and Costa del Sol, to see where these rules hit. the hardest. Here is how the rules apply in the different regions. Costa Blanca, the Valencian community. Strictest definition of tourist rental, 10 days or less need a license. Touristic room rental is forbidden. Licenses are not transferable, meaning that if you buy a property with a license, you cannot put the license in your name. You must get a new license. There are 100,000 licenses in the area, and places like Alicante and other towns have already suspended new licenses for 2 years. Fines up to 600,000. Costa Cálida, the province of Murcia, below the Costa Blanca. Short-term rentals under 30 days need a license, with no touristic room rentals unless you live on site. Licenses cannot be transferred. You must install a placard in the property. It is mandatory, and fines also hit 600,000 with strict standards like lifts for taller buildings. Costa del Sol, Andalusia, as usual, is more relaxed. Most flexible. Rentals up to 2 months count, and you can rent rooms if you are on site, up to 15 beds. Licenses can be transferred with property sales, and fines max at 150,000 euros. However, cities like Marbella and Malaga are tightening up, but areas outside the cities are easier. Standards focus more on comfort than strict infrastructure. Tourist rental apartments must be registered in regional registries. Again, your lawyer or the agency can take care of that. Renewals of all licenses will be revised after 2029. However, by 2029, something about the long-term rental crisis must be done, and hopefully Sanchez's government will be a distant memory. So, to sum up, Costa Blanca is the toughest for urban properties. Costa Cálida is strict, and the Costa del Sol is the easiest for flexibility, especially rentals outside the cities. Again, remember that while the perfect form of rental is a mix between tourist rental during the peak season and medium-term rental for the rest of the year, even if you do only medium-term rental, you can get a very, very good yield, especially now that there are no long-term rentals. So even people who need to live somewhere where they would rent long-term are forced to rent something medium-term. So what does all this mean for you property owners? First, compliance is non-negotiable. However, this is not an issue because your lawyer can take care of applying for the license, checking your town hall's rules, and secure the community approval if needed. And the agency that takes care of the management of the tourist rental for you will take care of the rest. So they know the rules perfectly well. They know what they have to do. So if you work with a good agency, you shouldn't worry about anything. Spain's tourist rental rules are evolving, but with the right strategy, you can still ensure that you get the best yield out of your investment. Check your region's rules, consult a lawyer, and weigh touristic versus medium-term rentals for profit and for peace of mind. I am at your disposal to help you find the best property and to also get you in touch with the best professionals, whether they are lawyers or rental agencies who can take care of all the business for you. If you have questions, drop them in the comments below. Please like and share this video. Remember to subscribe and hit the notification button so you will be informed about my next videos. For now, I thank you very much for watching, for spending again some time with me. I will see you next time, and in the meantime, take care.